Hey, what's up, guys? How you all doing tonight on this Sunday night, soon to be Monday morning? I'm going to do something different for once on this channel. I'm actually going to go over one of my older videos and see where what I've said in the past, where it stands now as far as the Idaho 4 case, because a lot has changed in this case than what I said in the past. So I want to actually go through one of my older videos. Let's get into it, guys. What do we know what's going on in Moscow, Idaho right now? Well, we know the trial's not going to be till next year or possibly the year after, the way things are going. And the hearing last week, you had Bill Thompson standing up and throwing a fit like a petulant child that throws a tantrum. Okay, what we know so far right now is that yes, the change of venue was granted for this case, and Judge John Judge is no longer the judge on the case. He actually sent a motion up to the Supreme Court to have himself removed, which it still baffles me why he did that. And just like with the Gonzaleses, feeling like that the last year was a waste there in Latah County if they were just going to move the trial anyway. Over a jury survey that he didn't approve of. And you have the judge in the case, Judge John Judge, in a prior hearing throwing a fit because he doesn't want to travel to a different county for the trial, and neither does the prosecutor. And in my opinion, that's all stupid. You had a woman call the sheriff's department because her son got a jury survey and she didn't like the questions on the jury survey. So she decided to call the sheriff's department. Apparently, there's a lot of law abiding citizens there in Moscow, Idaho. But where was that due diligence the day of the murders? Exactly. We have the 8 hour gap, and we don't know what happened in that 8 hours. All we know is the LE wasn't called until almost noon. But yet, you had a lady call the sheriff's department over a jury survey. So, answer me that question. If you have somebody calling for a jury survey, where was the 911 called in that 8 hours? Why did it take until noon? And then why haven't we heard the 911 call that was actually made at noon? Will we hear it in the trial? I don't know. I hope we hear it in the trial. There wasn't none. No one in that house called the cops right after the murders. It was an 8 hour gap in between the murders and the time the 911 was called. And it wasn't even the surviving roommates who had called the cops. it was a friend of, I believe it was Ethan Hunter Johnson. Now, mind you, the surviving roommates, they could call their friends over after they discovered the deceased bodies, but they couldn't call the cops. It just makes you think exactly what's going on in Moscow, Idaho. Well, it does make you think what's going on in Moscow, Idaho. Now we know that the house was demolished a year after the crimes. And personally, I think that's money motivated because when they were going to build the healing garden and they raised the funds to build the healing garden, all of a sudden the healing garden wasn't built there at the property. It was built on campus. And I've seen pictures of the healing garden. That is small. It's a small healing garden. And Scott Green, who's now the outgoing president of the University of Idaho, because the University of Idaho has named a new president, wants to build affordable student housing there at 1122 King Road. Now, we all know that the house was an off campus sorority home because you've had sorority girls live there. You've also had before the sorority girls, you had fraternity guys live there, but it was more prominent as a sorority for Alpha Phi and Pi Beta Phi. Now, if you look at it, if they build that low income student housing, is it going to be another off campus sorority home or an off campus fraternity home? I mean, since Pi Beta Phi and Alpha Phi and Sigma Chi and the other fraternity there, it's all less than 200 feet. That because that house stood prominently on Greek Row. So is this going to be another off-campus Greek house for sororities or fraternities? We'll just have to wait and see. There's always the what if situation. Well, what if the reason why the cops were called was Dylan fainted? Or what if this or what if that? There would be a lot of blood in that house. You would wake up to the stench of death after 8 hours. And why little Miss Dillon, she must have had an angel on her side that night because the killer walked right by her. And it just is kind of a coincidence that she opened up her door 3 separate times that night. The first time she opened it up, and there's been reports that she yelled out, "Shut the F up, I'm trying to sleep." Well, that would automatically alert the killer to her. Second time she opened up her door, she heard the sounds of Xana crying and a male voice going, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." See, normally the only type of people who say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you," is the police and EMTs. And then she shuts her door. That the PCA is a garbled up mess because Dylan contradicts herself in the PCA. She opened her door for the second time. Afterwards, she thought she heard the sounds of Xana crying. And then a paragraph and a half later, she opens her door for the third time after what she thought she heard was the sounds of Xana crying. And then, of course, you had her state that she heard what sounded like Kaylee saying, "There's someone here." When the cops then contradict her, saying, "Well, it must have been Kernodle because Kernodle was awake and watched on her TikTok app and got the DoorDash." Well, how do we know? How do we all know that that wasn't Xana who said there's someone here? Because they found Xana's DoorDash on the her bag on the counter in the kitchen, so she could have came out of her room and saw that back sliding glass door open and said, "There's someone here." There's just a lot of contradictory statements and half truths in that PCA.
Um, it's shut a while, and miraculously she opens up the door a third time, and she sees the killer walking towards the back door. But all she could describe on the killer was 5'10" or taller, bushy eyebrows. He was clad in black, had a face mask, and that was her only description. Oh, and he
5'10" or taller, athletically built, uh, not muscular, bushy eyebrows, he clad in black. What 21-year-old says clad in black? And the description she gave was basically a generic description of anybody on the campus of the U of I. And we all saw in the Banfield alcohol stop that the first gentleman that they stopped, which was Saeed, he fit that build. And he had bushy eyebrows. So I'm not giving all what Dylan said in that PCA where she was describing the killer. I'm not giving that much weight because that was basically a nondescript statement of anybody on the campus of the U of I. And for all we know, the killer, the unaliver, because we've all heard Steve G said he didn't have to go upstairs. They didn't have to go upstairs. Well, here's my thinking on it. The killer comes in, goes straight upstairs to Maddie's room because Maddie could have been the possible target. Kaylee comes out of her room, sees this person attacking her best friend slash sister, and the only reason why Kaylee had more brutal injuries is that she was trying to defend herself and defend Maddie. Killer comes down the stairs, runs into Xana. Xana runs towards her room, being pursued by the killer. The killer kills her there in the hallway, and then takes care of Ethan. Because if you think about it and you look about it, guys, this person comes in, does not check any doors in the house, doesn't check Dylan's door, doesn't check Xana's door, doesn't check Bethany's door, doesn't check Kaylee's door, comes in, goes upstairs to Maddie's room. First thing, Maddie's room, which would imply that Maddie was the initial target, and Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan were the collateral damage. Because Dylan said she saw the face of the killer, guys. Do you really think that this person would let Dylan live after her seeing his face? No, he would not. So I do not buy half the stuff Dylan states.
He was athletically built, not muscular. And then she closes her door from frozen shock phase, locks it, and then the 911 call is not made for 8 hours later. Don't you guys think that's kind of odd? I think it's kind of odd. And then they were interviewed, or I believe they were interrogated, because some say they were interviewed by Moscow police, ISP, and the FBI. Why, after these interviews, did they both lawyer up? Like instantaneously, right after the interviews, they lawyered up. And you have Miss Funk living off the grid in Reno, Nevada. And she was subpoenaed by Brian's defense team and Miss Ann Taylor. Her lawyer tried to get the subpoena quashed, and his statement was, and I quote, "Miss Funk no longer lives in Idaho. She wants nothing to do with this case or nothing to do with this house or that house." But I believe she did volunteer to be interviewed by the defense team, but it had to be in Reno, Nevada, and I do not know if that interview actually took place. And then you had
Now, we all know that the trial coming up next year or the year after, because we don't know when the trial is going to be since it got moved to Ada County, and we don't know how long the new judge is going to want to drag this case out. So, yeah, you could be looking at the trial somewhere next year or possibly by the end of next year. We don't know. We just don't know. But it is moved out of Latah County, and Brian will get a fair trial. Even though I don't think he's going to get a fair trial anywhere he goes, if it even makes it to trial.
Miss Dylan Mortensen, who is a social recluse, according to her father. She lives in Boise now. She smokes weed and plays video games all day. And she has tremendous survivor's guilt. And she is seeking spiritual healing from her spiritual community, which I find to be a load of horse manure. You have the tattoos that it was either Dylan and her best friend or Dylan and Bethany got, and there was only a 26% chance to get the order of the victim's right, MKXE, and they got those like a week, 2 weeks after the murders, and nobody knew exactly the order of the murders until the indictment, and the indictment was sealed until the suspect was in custody and extradited back from Pennsylvania. It's just so odd because indictment 1 was the felony burglary. Indictment 2 was murder in the first degree of Madison Mogan. Indictment 3 was murder in the first degree of Kayla Gonzalez. 4 was murder in the first degree of Xander Kernodle. 5 was murder in the first degree of Ethan Chapin, MKXE. So
Now, see, I've already heard that it was Dylan and somebody else that got the tattoos of MKXE. So, a lot of people said it was Dylan and Bethany who got it. No, it was Dylan and uh, one of her little sisters in the sorority. So, but Dylan did definitely get the tattoo MKXE uh, on the 17th of November 2022. So, like little over a week after the unalivings, maybe less than a week.
how would they know to get those initials right if the order wasn't put out until after Brian was back in Idaho, which was roughly, I believe, January 2023, and they got the tattoos about a week to 2 weeks after the murders. So that just don't add up, guys. It really don't. And Brian, who was studying to be uh, a criminologist in Pullman, Washington, he was going for his PhD in cloud forensics. How do we know that he's not sitting in the chair that he's sitting in? Because he could have came across a dirty little secret at the Pullman Police Department. And the Pullman Police Department didn't want him finding out their dirty little secret. And being an intuitive guy that he is, he asked questions. So, for all we know, that could be the reason why he's being framed for this murder.
There's a lot of different hypotheses and theories on why he's being framed for this murder, but he is being framed for this murder because he was only in Pullman for like less than 6 months. And if you're a cold-blooded unaliver of 4 people, why would the police let you drive from Washington clear back to Pennsylvania? They wouldn't. They would arrest you right there. They would figure a way to find probable cause and arrest you. They wouldn't let you drive 2,500 miles across country just to arrest you on the East Coast and then have you shipped back to Idaho. They wouldn't. That's not how it's done.
That's because he started asking questions. And we all know that there's a tie to the house from Emma Bailey, whether it be drugs or just knowing them as friends. It just makes you wonder, Could Emma have been feeding information to somebody about when the girls got home? It just, in my opinion, this whole case is just whack. There's a whole bunch of timelines spinning all at once. So, like always, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Hit the bell notification for any new uploads. And let me know down in the comments about the topics I just touched on.
This entire case is narrative driven by the mainstream media, by Bill Thompson, especially by the Gonzalez family. And we were talking in my previous video about frozen shock phase. Well, while I was playing, I looked something up. Trauma shock in any sudden, terrible experience that disrupts your well being and overwhelms you. A traumatic experience can shock your system, causing you to go into a state of disassociation, where your body and mind feel disconnected and nothing feels real. Your brain resorts to this adaptive defense mechanism when trying to cope with stressful or overwhelming events that it cannot prevent or escape. Shock helps reduce your awareness of your physical or emotional pain by dulling your senses, making you numb, and reducing your conscious cognizance of the event. What trauma did Dylan go through that night? As far as I know, she didn't go through any trauma. The only trauma she supposedly went through is seeing an unknown male in the house that she stated she didn't recognize. That's not trauma. Now, I could understand going through the frozen shock phase after finding the bodies the next day. But going into frozen shock phase after seeing an undescript male in the house, I just don't get it, and I don't buy it. Because if you think about it, she locked the door and went back to bed. And the smell of the blood that morning when she woke up finally, and even one of the law enforcement officers said that he walked into the house and he could smell decomposition because the bodies had begun to decompose. Then I would understand frozen shock phase after seeing all that happen in the home, not just by opening the door and seeing somebody walk by. I don't buy it, guys. Like always, guys, like, subscribe, and comment on my channel. Hit the bell notification for any new uploads. And you guys have a good Monday. And I'm going to try to drop some more content later on in the morning when I wake up. You guys take care of yourselves. This is Robert with True Crime Podcast, and I'm out. Peace.
Devil in a red dress, call 911, I'm a killer. You know I hate to confess.